Hey everyone, how's it going? Making a little video today. I'm gonna throw one together for you. Not my typical kind of videos, but I have fun doing these, and thought it's a pretty cool idea. We're gonna put some RGB NeoPixels in a Chevy cluster. You can do this with pretty much any dash that you're capable of taking apart, but we're gonna run a Bluetooth controller with some RGBs, remove the original bulbs, and you'll be able to change the color with an app on your phone of the dash inside your truck. I did one of these a long time ago for a friend of mine for a show truck that he had, and he ended up taking it up to Pismo, and everybody kind of went crazy and wanted it done. So I keep getting people asking me to do them, so I figured let's make a video. It's kind of a cool little idea. Little disclaimer though, if you take your cluster apart and damage it in the process, I am not responsible. You should have some soldering and some minor mechanical abilities to try this, but I'll leave that part up to you and whether or not you want to do it. So let's get started with this video. I'll give you a little list of things you need. It's really not hard to do, but in the end, you decide if it's worth it or not. I think they're pretty cool. And like I said, I get a lot of requests for them. So I'm going to start with this video, and then I'm going to show you how to do the heater controls and some of the other lighting switches on the dash too. But again, this can be done with lots of different vehicles, not just the Chevys, but this happens to be the clusters that I get the most access to. So let's get this list going, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need for this project, I got a little list here for you of things I've thrown together. There's different versions of these, but what I'm using here is called the SP105E Magic Controller, and what this is a Bluetooth RGB LED controller. There's different versions. I have a few of them for different projects now. You just got to pay attention when you order these. This one here is for a different style of lights. If you look, the connector is actually a red, green, and blue, white output, as opposed to this one here is just it has your clock and your data line, and with the 2812 LEDs, the data line is all you need. We're gonna need some small gauge wire. This kit here I got on Amazon for 12 bucks. 28 gauge, has 50 feet a piece. Really cool kit. We're gonna need the lights. Okay, what I'm gonna use for this one here today, these you can buy them in a sheet. They're WS2812 addressable RGB LEDs. They come in a sheet, and then you just pop them off, and you can attach them one at a time. Or you can also buy a strip light set. These are a little bit bigger, but you can actually cut them at the line right in the middle. And these are all individually addressable strip lights, but they're both about the same price. I prefer the pixels. They're called RGB NeoPixels or pixels, but either one will work. So we have our strip lights or our pixels. You're going to need a hot glue gun, some 28 gauge wire, a controller, some solder, your soldering iron. I've already got mine warmed up. I run it at about 400 degrees, and then I'm using leaded solder. It actually melts faster. I think it's 6337. Yeah, 6337. And then we're going to use a little bit of flux, and then of course you need your cluster. And then what I have here is a flux pin. So what I'm going to do before I even break these apart is I'm going to take my flux pin, and then I'm going to just put a little bit of flux on the back of each one of these lights. And so I don't forget later, I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. You don't have to use flux. It's already built into the solder, but if you put it on the lights and let it dry, it just makes for a better solder joint. But before I get sidetracked here, I just wanted to show you on these lights. It's actually, you'll see in the end, a really cool result you get. Kind of a mess, but you just gotta pay attention to the data in and data out. These are individually addressable, so if you wanted to have your colors like alternate from left and right on your cluster, the data in and out is going to be important. If you're just planning on changing solid colors from color to color, then it wouldn't really matter, but I always go data in, data out when I solder mine. And then the outside is power and ground. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the cluster, get it taken apart. We're going to get the hot glue gun warmed up. My soldering iron's already warmed up. I'm going to put some flux on the back of these lights, and I'm going to show you how to do this little setup that I did. So give me a second to get everything warmed up, and we'll take the cluster apart. Okay, I have some other videos already posted on how to take a cluster apart, so I'm not going to get too in-depth on that, but you can watch that video. Basically, we're just going to pull these little tabs and pop the front and rear covers off. Just use your hands, pull up on them, and you should pretty easily be able to take them apart. Obviously, this cluster is one of my spares that I'm yet to rebuild. You can see we have a needle hanging off. I always keep a couple spares around in case a customer comes to me with one of their clusters that's not quite rebuildable. So I'm going to pop these covers off. We'll strip it down, and then I'll show you how to take the needles off. Okay, so let me flip my camera over. Obviously, this cluster is already damaged. Like I said, it's one of mine that I'm going to rebuild. But what you can do is you can turn your gauges all the way to the left if you need to, and then you can mark where your needles are at when they're fully stopped on the outside edge. And then it's just as simple as for reassembly. So when you go to put them back on, you can put them back on in the same position. Basically, you just kind of rotate and pull up, and they'll come right off. So rotate, pull up, rotate and pull up on the needles. Don't rotate, don't pull too hard, because the stepper motors will break on these. Then you're going to have to watch my other video on how to repair them. But today we're just making a cool little lighting effects on this. And then once you have it to that point, you're just going to lift the front cover off. Set that off to the side. And now you're down to your bare cluster. So what we want to do is we want to remove the factory lights. You see the little blue bulbs here. All you got to do, this might be hard to do with one hand, I'm going to have to set up a tripod in a minute, but you're just going to put a little tiny bit of heat just like that, and they should pretty much almost fall off, like so. And the only ones you're going to take off are here, the one here, the two next to the speedometer. You got one here, one here, one here, and one here. Don't pull off the top two. Those are your turn signal lights. This one here is, I believe, your brake or ABS light, so we're not going to take this one off. Just take off the ones that are actually in the white section, all these little blue bulbs, and be careful up here where the resistors are at. You know, the whole idea behind this is we're just going to add some cool lighting effects, but what's the point if you destroy your cluster in the process? So like I said in the intro, this is kind of a little bit for someone with a little more advanced soldering skills. But anyways, I'm going to pop all these bulbs off, and then we'll get started on doing the lighting kit. Okay, all the little bulbs are removed. Now if you have a heavy duty or a diesel, there's going to be one more stepper motor here for the transmission temperature, and there's going to be one more bulb here. Obviously this cluster is just out of a regular, I believe a 2004. So get all your lights off, and then we can set it to the side, and we'll get started on the soldering of the very first light, and get it attached to the board. And it's a pretty simple process. We'll just go from there and just keep adding the lights. Now you're going to kind of end up with a little wiring mess of the wires jumping across your cluster, but that's why we use a hot glue to keep everything in place. We're going to keep it off of anything important, and I've done a few of these so far. Nobody's had any problems, and they look really cool. So I'm going to move this off to the side. We'll start soldering the first bulb together, or the first pixel, sorry, and we'll get it attached to the board. Okay, so what we're going to do, it makes it a lot easier, is I've already put my flux on this, and I know I need 8 bulbs for this cluster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my solder. It's easier to pre-solder the back of these when they're all put together, as opposed to taking them apart one at a time. So basically I'm just going to run, and I'm just going to put a dab of solder on each little spot here. Not a lot, but just enough so that the wires are going to be able to be soldered without bridging the gaps between the contacts. You don't want to put a lot of heat on these pixels, but basically that's all we're going to do. We're just going to put a little bit of solder. Like so. And then on our wires that we have, this one's in the holder. I think I'm going to use red for the positive, black for the negative, obviously, and then I'll just use a yellow data line. So let me get this here into the frame of the camera. And then I'm going to just, I don't know if it's going to focus on that or not. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the ends of the wires. Sorry, let me try and get this focused a little bit. Okay, so it's not. Anyways, I know that's blurry. I'll try to fix it in just a minute, but same concept. I'm just going to put a little bit of solder, pre-solder the end of the 3 wires to start with. And we're going to put them onto our first bulb. Okay, so I'm going to try and do the best I can here without messing up the video. So basically, I have my 8 bulbs on the top row here that have already been pre-soldered that I need. Then I flipped it over so I have my inputs and outputs in the right direction. And then we're going to 5 volts is on the bottom. Let me get this in a better position so I can actually see while I do this. And all we're going to do is, before we break them off, is we are just going to solder to 1/2 5 volts. We're going to grab the next wire that's already pre-soldered. We're going to put the ground. Hopefully you guys can see this. We want some nice solder joints, and then I'm going to grab my yellow for data. Okay. Okay, so we have the inlet side, or our first bulb input side is all soldered. If you could see it, they look pretty good. Nice solder joints. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give myself about 10 inches of wire on these first 3, because this is going to be the first bulb, and these wires are actually going to come out of the cluster. So I'm going to grab my side cutters, snip them off, and then what we're going to do is we're going to solder the next 3 on with about 4 inches of wire, and then I'm going to take this bulb off. So as we find the length we need, we'll solder to the next one and the next one. It just makes it easier. I mean, you could tape them down and stuff like that, but I just like to do it this way. I can do them real quick. So I'm going to get 3 more about 4-inch pieces of wire ready, and I'm going to solder them onto the next bulb. Okay, so now same process for the outlet side on this bulb. We're going to jump across to the output side. We're going to solder it on, make sure we have nothing bridging. Okay, so now we have our voltage out. We're going to grab our data out. Now if you were to jump the datas across on these, it wouldn't make a difference. The datas can all be touching, but you would lose that individually addressable portion of it. I've done kits on the newer trucks that have a lot more bulbs, and it's kind of cool. You can do some pretty cool effects with the individually addressable ones. You can split the color of the cluster. You can have it change colors to music. I have a couple of them that I've built with Adrenos and some simple coding, and you can actually make them do some pretty cool stuff to the music inside your truck. The last one I did, it's actually up in Pismo this weekend, and everything went to the music, and we also changed out the bulbs in the heater control unit and the door switch. So basically this bulb is done. I'm going to snap it off here and see if I can kind of give you a close-up of what it looks like. So basically, we have in and out on this bulb, and then the output on this bulb is going to go to the next one, and then from that one to the next one, that one to the next one. So I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that this video is sideways. Forgive me for that. I don't want to do it over again. So basically we're going to go in and out, in and out, in and out across the cluster to the different bulbs. So I'm going to solder this one to the next bulb at the right length. We're going to check the cluster, and then so on and so forth. First one here, let me back it up a little bit. And like I said, this is gonna look kind of messy, but in the end it's really cool. So basically what we're gonna do is these have a very important, they're conductive on the bottom, and our original circuit board is also conductive, so you can either move the bulbs slightly offset, or what I do is I hot glue gun everything down. So I'm sure you don't want to see my hand. So basically we're going to use quite a bit of hot glue here to insulate it. We're going to put the bulb here, then it's going to run into this one, and then out to the next one, and then out to the next one, out to the next one, and so forth. So we're going to do in in from the controller, out to the next bulb, and I like to go from here to here, across to here, up to here, over to here. That way we can have the light strobe across the dash if we want to. So I'm going to put the first 3 bulbs together, and then I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so we're making progress here, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys the concept behind it. Basically I hot glued this one down, and I'm going to show you how to do the next one. So I have input, output, input, output. So we're going to put enough hot glue to where we can completely insulate this bulb from the board. So it will be sitting on the board, but it won't actually be sitting to where it can contact the old contacts underneath the bulb. And just like so, I could see, if you were to look underneath here, I have a good 1/8 of an inch of hot glue covering the original bulb contacts and then holding this one in place. Once we do that, I'm going to put a little bit here on the board just to kind of keep the wires nice and clean. And as that dries, then what we're going to do is we're going to move this around here, and then we're going to put the next one. Some of these areas get a little bit tight, but this one's not bad. We're going to go around, we're going to hook it to the next one, and then we'll jump across. Here's where we got to be careful, but what I do is put a little extra hot glue, and this is completely reversible. If you decide you don't want to do it, all you have to do is just go around, peel the hot glue off, and then put your original bulbs back on. So you're not actually destroying anything on your cluster, but it's a pretty cool effect. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get the next few on here. Once we get across to the other side of the board, I'll take a minute to show you some more, but instead of showing you every bulb I put on, we'll just go 1, 2, wrap it around 3, go around 4, and then you get the idea. So I'm going to keep working, and then I'll show you in just a minute where we're at. Okay, so that's just about a wrap for hooking up the bulbs. I went ahead, there's a notch on the edge of the cluster. I tucked the 3 wires behind, so we have in to out, out to in, and so forth all the way around. You can see we have it all the way down to the last bulb, and if you had the heavy duty, you can do this on a lot of different clusters. This is just an example. You could actually route one more here, but basically everything's tucked nicely around the gauges. I have the most important step in all this, and I understand this isn't for everybody. I just thought I'd share, and if you want to get creative, I have enough hot glue to make sure the back metal contacts where we soldered the wires on don't touch the old contacts from the old bulbs. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and set the faceplate on the cluster. Sorry about that. Set the faceplate on, and what you can do for your needles is Usually I'll put the whole cluster back together, but what I like to do is you just barely set them on. You'll feel the motor stop, and then you can put them back to your original marks that you had made. Obviously, I'm going to go back through and rebuild this cluster later. This is just an example, and we're going to do that all the way around to the gauges. Find the stepper, slightly rotate it. If you feel it stop, you can come all the way back around, line it up to your marks, push it on. So I'm going to go ahead and put all those on, and then we're going to put the back cover on. Now on the back cover, we are going to route the wires through the hole in the back cover as we put it on, and then we'll have the wires for the lights out the back. So I'm going to put the covers on, I'll show you how they're routed, and then we'll hook up the controller. Okay, so what I've done now is I just two-way taped this on real quick, but wires are coming out the back. This is going to sit on the back of your cluster, and then we have a power and a ground, which can go, I will either leave it in the description or I'll show you that we can actually just hook the power and the ground off of the ground pin and the instrument panel lighting wire on the connector. So we'll get those two wired up. I'm obviously not going to put it back into a car, but that's all there is to it. We got the front put together. We've got our controls for the lights. We have our controller, and I've already downloaded the app. So what I'll do is I'll run the screen recorder and kind of show you how the app works. Very simple. There's actually some really cool ones. And then we'll turn the cluster on and see how it looks with the lights. Alright, so that's just about it. Got it installed. Normally what you're going to do is you're just going to run a power and a ground. You can T-tap them into your, on a Chevy truck, onto the back of the cluster. There's a separate power wire. I can put it in the description, and a ground, which pin numbers, or you can just run them straight to your light switch, or any way you would hook up any kind of aftermarket lights. But for the sake of finishing this video, this one also has a regular input plug, and then I'm just going to run it off my desktop power supply here. And then I got my daughter's phone. What you're going to do, sorry, is, let me see here. You'd think I would have this ready. Okay, you're going to install, let me go ahead and power it up. And then you're going to install an app called Magic LED. And then once you go on Magic LED, you're going to open it up. It's going to connect to your Bluetooth controller. And then from here, you can select your colors and change your cluster to whatever you want just by moving your thumb around on the wheel. So when you get in your car, you can set the lights for whatever kind of mood you want. I've also made them before where they actually dance to the music on the car, and this app's pretty cool. It's got some preset modes you can select, and it'll actually strobe the lights in different patterns. It's daylight here right now, so you really can't see it all that well. But, the way we wired them up for this particular cluster, I'm not sure if you can get a good view, but it'll actually strobe through different color lights, and you can make your own preset patterns and stuff. So I know this isn't for everyone. It's just a you know, weird little video I wanted to make because I do a lot of these. Actually, I did a couple for a friend, and then people see it, and then more people want it. So yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to get in your car, kind of have something a little bit different, change the color of your lights on your dash. A lot of people want them to match the radio, so you don't have to pick a particular bulb. You can do some pretty cool stuff. Change them from purple to pretty much any color you can find. And maybe I'll do a follow-up video to where I show you how to go into the heater controls and the door, and you can actually add bulbs, different color bulbs in there too. So kind of a silly video, not one of my best, but it's just something that I wanted to show you. That's a pretty cool idea that I came across and thought about doing the other day. So, and this will work on pretty much most cars. Just be careful before you go turn into your cluster and taking it apart. And and breaking something. I don't want to hold any liability for that, but I just kind of wanted to show you with a simple controller and about $20 in parts, you can do something cool. It's real popular on the Chevy truck. So thanks for watching, and I'll be posting some more videos soon. Thanks.